we're in the book of Judges, and it's a history lesson on the dangers of ignorance. Okay, being ignorant to God's word. And a quick word on context before we begin. Because you don't want to just open up the Bible and go, oh, it says, pluck out your eye if it's... No, you want to know what's going on. So let me help you get to know what's going on in the text we're about to look at in Judges. Israel, the nation, there's a war brewing with the Ammonites. The Ammonites have been ruling over Israel for 18 years. And I'm talking just taking them to the cleaner. They are a really mean ruler. And Israel has finally had enough. And they finally cry out to their God, Yahweh. But not before consulting every other deity under the sun. You see, because by the time, so Israel's God is Yahweh. Yahweh is the God who parted the Red Sea, who delivered them from the Egyptians, who saved them over and over. But Israel, as a lesson for us, Israel had this knack for veering off and finding other things to put their heart on, to worship. And they would worship the gods of the neighboring nations. And the Ammonites had ruled over them for 18 years. And so they were used to, at that point, going to the same gods the Ammonites use. I mean, why not? Yahweh let us down. We're ruled by these people. Their God must be better or something. So, but Israel has now gone, ain't none of these gods helping us. Let's check out Yahweh, see what he's going to do for us. See if he'll part the Red Sea again. So, but listen to how the conversation went between Yahweh, God, and his people. It says, and the people of Israel cried out to the Lord, saying, we have sinned against you, because we have forsaken our God and served the Baals. And the Lord said to the people of Israel, did I not save you from the Egyptians and the Amorites, from the Ammonites and from the Philistines? The Sidonians also, and the Amalekites and the Maonites oppressed you, and you cried out to me, and I saved you out of their hand. Yet you have forsaken me and served other gods. Therefore I will save you no more. Go and cry out to the gods whom you have chosen. Let them save you in your time, in the time of your distress. In the rooms of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and Narcotics Anonymous, they say, you arrived here because you tried every other house on the street. This is the last door on the block. You came knocking. And that means if you don't figure it out here now, there's nothing else for you. Yahweh says, you came to me after all the other houses on the street, and there ain't nothing for you here either. That's scary. The God who is love says, I've had enough. Go try those houses again. But this Israel is a stubborn people if they are anything at all. And instead of tucking their tail, they just start acting like God's going to deliver them. They break down the statues that they've been worshiping, and they start looking for a leader that God will use to deliver them. Got to love that faith. Makes me think we got to have that faith. Because guess what God does? All right, we're going to see. They go and they find a guy named Jephthah. Jephthah was cast out of his family at a young age. Not because of anything he did, but because his mother was a prostitute, and he, according to his brothers, didn't fit in with the rest of the family because he had a different mom. He was of an illegitimate birth. And so at a young age, they ran him out of Dodge. They're like, look, you're not going to grow up and get a part of the inheritance with us. Kick rocks. And they send him to the hill country. But Jephthah is like a master of his environment. and has a knack for just making friends and win friends and influence people or something. And he gathers a following out in the woods. Maybe he's Robin Hood type. I don't know. And he becomes this great leader, apart from his family's everything, on his own. And it's not long before that family comes crawling to his doorstep going, Jephthah, will you lead us and lead our people and allow God to make you our leader? Let's read that. Jephthah the Gileadite was a valiant warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute, and Gilead was his father. Gilead's wife bore him sons, and when they grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, you will have no inheritance in our father's family because you are the son of another woman. So Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob. Then some worthless men joined Jephthah and went on raids with him. Sometime later, the Ammonites fought against Israel. When the Ammonites made war with Israel, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said to him, come, be our commander, and let's fight the Ammonites. Jephthah replied to the elders of Gilead, didn't you hate me and drive me out of my father's family? Why then have you come to me now when you're in trouble? They answered Jephthah, well, that's true, but now we turn to you. Come fight with us, fight the Ammonites, and you will become the leader of all the inhabitants of Gilead. So Jephthah said to them, if you are bringing me back to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them to me, I will be your leader. The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, the Lord is our witness if we don't do as you say. So in a nutshell, Jephthah says, look what the cat dragged in. Guess who's Bizak? You want me, huh? And they're like, please, just please. He's like, all right, we'll make you our leader. He's like, yeah, you will. You will. And now you think about it, a man cast out of his own family, out of this Gileadite clan, Gileadite clan, and now he's got the opportunity to be the king, the big dog. And he's like, yeah, I'll take my chances. I'll do that. A little success is the best revenge. So here it goes. This is the main passage. Sorry, it's a lot of reading, but you got to get to reading. You got to know what's going on. You don't want to just take my word for it. Here it is. The Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah, who traveled through Gilead and Manasseh, and then through Mizpah of Gilead. He crossed over to the Ammonites from Mizpah of Gilead. Jephthah made this vow to the Lord. If you in fact hand over the Ammonites to me, whoever comes out of the doors of my house to greet me when I return safely from the Ammonites will belong to the Lord, and I will offer that person as a burnt offering. Whew. Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord handed them over to him. He defeated 20 of their cities with a great slaughter from Eror all the way to the entrance of Minnith and to Abel Keramim. So the Ammonites were subdued before the Israelites. When Jephthah went to his home in Mizpah, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with tambourines and dancing. She was his only child. He had no other son or daughter besides her. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, no, not my daughter. You have devastated me. You have brought great misery on me. I have given my word to the Lord, and I cannot take it back. Then she said to him, my father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you have said, for the Lord brought vengeance on your enemies, the Ammonites. She also said to her father, let me do this one thing. Let me wander 2 months through the mountains with my friends and mourn my virginity. Go, he said. And he sent her away 2 months. So she left with her friends and mourned her virginity as she wandered through the mountains. At the end of the 2 months, she returned to her father, and he kept the vow he had made about her. And she had never been intimate with a man. Now it became a custom in Israel that 4 days each year the young women of Israel would commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. That's God's word. So sad. Jephthah stops on the way to battle and makes a deal with God. He says, God, if you give me this victory, I will offer up to you any person that comes out of my house when I return as a burnt offering. Just do this one thing for me. He gets the victory. His daughter's the one that comes out of the house, his only child. Jephthah made a deal with God, but it sounds more like he made a deal with the devil. And that's because he did. Jephthah, and by extension Israel as a nation, had what we call a synchronistic faith. A little Jewish tradition, a little pagan ritual, maybe some black magic, some dark arts. Today it might look more like a little Masonic worship, a little bit of the Bible, a little magic. We start mixing everything with our Christianity. That's what happens when we don't understand who God is and what he expects of his people. If this guy Jephthah had any idea who God is, he would never have made a deal to offer up a human sacrifice. But guess what? The pagan land that he was living in, that was normal. They had a god named Molech. That was their big god. He was like, they had this bronze statue. They would heat up the arms with a fire pit, glowing red hot, and put their children in his arms in order to get this deity to do something for them. For his services, he required child sacrifice. So the child would obviously die in the arms, and then they would into the fire below, and then, I don't know, get your 3 wishes. But for 18 years, that God right there had the Ammonites ruling over the Egyptians. So they're going, well, he can get it done. But he didn't get it done for them. That's why they went to Yahweh. But that's what happens. They were so far gone from what they should have known about the God of the Bible, who's given them warnings, who's showed who he is and what he requires of them and what he absolutely hates. He told them before they came into this land, do not start acting like these people. Do not start worshiping like these people. When you enter the land the Lord your God has given you, do not imitate the detestable customs of those nations. No one among you is to sacrifice his son or daughter in the fire, practice divination, tell fortunes, interpret omens, practice sorcery, cast spells, consult a medium or a spiritist, or inquire of the dead. Everyone who does these acts is detestable to the Lord, and the Lord your God is driving out the nations before you because of these detestable acts. Why am I bringing all this up right now? This is my first sermon of the year. Why am I bringing this up? We'll get there, but for one, what I've gathered from studying this text for years is when we let culture influence what we think about God, we end up with a gross misunderstanding of the God of the Bible. Things don't get this drastic overnight. Okay. It's not like, oh, I forgot to pray yesterday, and now I'm starting to think about sacrificing one of my children to Molech. It doesn't happen like that. This is bad juju, handed down, passed on, spread around. Okay? An illustration. You might go, oh, this is far-fetched. So I don't tell my kids about Jesus not once in their life. I'm going to let them have their own journey of faith. Figure it out for themselves. I don't want to influence that. Like, I don't want to. So my boys grow up, they go off to college, and my boy falls in love with a girl who's been raised in a home with witches and warlocks and all that good stuff that there's plenty of in the Bay Area. Let me just tell you, plenty of it. They're on Facebook. They're not hiding out. And I mean, I was just down the street and they got Sons of Satan biker vests. I'm like, how is he a good dad? This stuff is for real. And so though my boy, who I don't want to steer in any which way, falls in love. They start partying. They start doing this dark stuff. There's no consequences for it. For whatever reason, there's no consequences for it. Then they have kids. And now my grandkid grows up and he's a full-on Satan worshiper because that was his environment. Okay. That's not far-fetched, guys. It's not far-fetched. It's not. And it's not to scare anybody. It's just the reality. And I mean, there is so much with our culture right now. Kids don't want to get married. Well, I don't want to get married and have a family. I can't even afford to move out of my mom's house. There's so much right now that's tumbling down that we have to be dialed in ourselves, and we have to start passing on the information about God to the next generation so that they don't end up completely gone. Like Israel, like Jephthah. This isn't disobedience, this is ignorance. They didn't know any better, in a sense. 18 years, some of those people were born and raised under this stuff. And let me tell you something. You think we're in a Christian nation? We ain't in a Christian nation. Never were. You say, the founding fathers, let me tell you this. You were raised in a pagan land. You were raised in a pagan land. Which means culture has influenced you and me. All of this is so tragic, but here's the thing, and this. Let me just hammer this down. Let me just kick this horse one more time, and then we'll leave the horse, and we'll find some solution. God says this to Moses. Any Israelite or alien residing in Israel who gives any of his children to Molech, specifically, hundreds of years earlier he says this, to Molech, must be put to death, and the people of the country are to stone him. Now, why do I say all of Israel had been just completely gone? Because they had 2 months to come across this writing. If they were ever in God's word, they had 2 months while his daughter went off to weep for her virginity. Not to seek God, to weep for her virginity. Which, I'm not saying don't do that. And there's way more meaning to that, but not to say, maybe if she went to seek God, God would have sent somebody. But forget her. How about Jephthah, this new leader? Nobody comes and tells him, Jephthah, we're going to kill you after you kill your daughter. And then, how about this? Also, way earlier, God said this. If someone swears rashly to do what is good or evil concerning anything, a person may speak rashly in an oath without being aware of it, but later recognizes it. He must bring his penalty for guilt for the sin he has committed to the Lord. A female lamb or goat from the flock is a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement on his behalf for his sin. All he had to do was give up a goat if he had known, instead of his daughter. He burned his daughter. She died. The passage is clear. I've studied it for years. The passage is clear. He did. And this is my big idea. Failing to know what God has told us doesn't spare us of the consequences when we do what he has told us not to do. Ignorance is not bliss. The end of the book of Judges says, the very last, the thesis is the last sentence of Judges. It says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to him. That's why. No direction. Today we hear live your truth. I get the sentiment. But then if we're saying there's no objective truth, then it's your truth, my truth. Hey, that's cool if you got a good moral compass, but how about when Charles Manson says that? Is it okay for him to live his truth? Ignorance is destructive. And God has not left us without instructions.